What's up guys, I'm Dave Klein, and welcome to my Sekiro Lore series. I thought I'd start things off a little differently this time around, as there's so many different factions to pay attention to, and I wanted to make a video that I think would be all around helpful for the overall lore. If it isn't obvious, there will be massive spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. And with that said, let's talk about the various clans, bloodlines, and locations of Sekiro, who's a part of them, and what their goals are. As we know from the intro to Sekiro, the entire game takes place during the closing period of the Sengoku era. This was an era of massive wars throughout Japan, with various warring daimyos trying to claim leadership of not only individual locations, but all of Japan. While the location of Ashina is entirely fictional, this background will be important to note for a number of elements going forwards. The game kicks off with Isshin Ashina staging a coup to defeat the current residing head of Ashina, General Shuzen Tamura. While we don't know much about Tamura and his faction, we do know that he'd at some point taken over the lands of Ashina from his people, overrunning them and exerting his rule. It's possible he was part of the Interior Ministry, but we'll get back to that. So with Isshin Ashina staging the coup, he became the head of Ashina with their victory and for all intents and purposes, the local ruling daimyo. While daimyo were typically faithful to the shogun and emperor, in theory at least, basically it was the title given to ruling feudal lords and sometimes the leader of a clan, just like Isshin Ashina would be. Something important to note is that in Sengoku Japan, it was commonplace for people to frequently change their names as their titles and positions in life improved. So I think it's actually pretty likely that Isshin the Sword Saint, as he was called in his prime, actually changed his name to Isshin Ashina after becoming the ruler of the region in order to showcase his title. So, all of that stated, Isshin is the primary head of the Ashina clan and presiding ruler of the Ashina people. He also goes around disguised as a Tengu, murdering assassins, informants, and shinobi from potential rivals to continually ensure nobody opposes his rule. Something really cool to notice is you can actually find this outfit in his room when he's there, either on the wall or discarded in the back. The next person we know is Genichiro Ashina. Born a peasant, Genichiro Ashina was taken in by the Ashina after his mother's death. While it's unclear as to exactly why, Genichiro was adopted by the Ashina clan and therefore given the Ashina title and name. He's considered Isshin's grandson, so I'm not entirely sure who Isshin's children would have been if Isshin ever had kids. As Ashina is on the brink of war, Genichiro's entire purpose is to preserve Ashina as he knows it and stop the Interior Ministry and Central Forces from taking the land. Serving directly under them, we see many of the enemies found throughout the first portion of the game. The various Nightjar shinobi found throughout Ashina Castle and at the Hirata Estate are directly under the control of Isshin. Meanwhile, all of the samurai who train at Ashina Castle train in Isshin's style, whom we also find in both Ashina and Hirata Estate. Fighting alongside them are longtime war veterans, the 7 Ashina Spears who helped Lord Isshin in the First War. The 7 Spears of Ashina were pivotal in Isshin's coup. He awarded the lance to none but his most loyal samurai, yet now only a few of the 7 remain. The 2 we find and fight in the game are Shikibu Toshikatsu Yamauchi and Shume Masaji Oniwa. Similarly, while Gyobu Masataka Oniwa, as a side note, I genuinely feel like I have to say his entire name exactly like that, was originally a bandit as indicated by his memory. Gyobu Oniwa once led a group of infamous bandits, but he was defeated by Isshin, who was so captivated by his show of strength, they took him in as an Ashina warrior. Oniwa would later go on to become Genichiro Ashina's most trusted retainer. Gyobu became a major player in Isshin's coup and helped drive Isshin to victory. He still stands as one of Ashina's major and most feared defenders with the nickname of Demon. As a few quick hits with some of the mid-bosses you face, Leader Shigenori Yamauchi during the prologue, General Tenzen Yamauchi, General Kuranosuke Matsumoto, the Ashina Elite, and Ujinari Mizuo were all members of the Ashina clan. The Chained Ogres are all under the control of Ashina. If something has red eyes, similar to the first Chained Ogre you fight, it's usually safe to presume Ashina is somehow behind it, with their experimentations and obsession into creating undying warriors. Again, Ashina is willing to go to any lengths to defend its kingdom, so additionally, the Blazing Bull is under their relative control. As I mentioned, the Ashina clan became obsessed with the power of rejuvenation. A major player in this, working with Ashina, was Emma's mentor Dogen. While Dogen pushed away from the power of rejuvenation, he worked closely with the Ashina people, devising all sorts of methods to heal them during and after battles. Dogen was also essential in crafting the mechanical arm both the sculptor and Sekiro end up using. Dogen had a rival in this, in Dojun/Dosaku, as I believe they're the same person, just with a Dr. Jekyll/Mr. Hyde complex going on. While Dojun considered himself a rival to Dogen, they both worked for Ashina and had the same general goal. The sculptor who rescues you was a shinobi who trained in the Sunken Valley and came to work under the Ashina. We know for certain that the sculptor, whose nickname is Orangutan, due to his training methods, had his arm cut off by Isshin to prevent him from becoming a Shura. And even though in some dialogue he tells us Ashina became dangerous for him and Emma at a certain point, while not a part of the Ashina clan, I think we can say that he also worked as a shinobi for the Ashina for a number of reasons. For one, the fact Isshin only cut off his arm, but didn't kill him, heavily implies they were fighting on the same side. Isshin has clearly been shown to be merciless, so I don't think he would mind killing another shinobi. Another hint towards this is that the undead samurai Hanbei, who hangs out near the dilapidated temple, refers to the sculptor as Sekijo. The main character's nickname of Sekiro was dubbed to him by Isshin Ashina, who's combining the kanji of Seki and Ro, with Ro meaning wolf and Seki essentially meaning half of a whole. So with Sekiro being one-armed, you can see where that comes into play. Sekijo is similar, with Jo meaning orangutan. So I think it's safe to assume the sculptor's nickname of Sekijo actually came from Isshin Ashina as well. Finally, we come to Emma. As a starving child who likely lost her parents, the sculptor rescued her from the battlefield and fed her. However, she was eventually passed over to Dogen, who adopted her and raised her as his child. Through this, she became a doctor serving Isshin Ashina, who trained her in the art of the blade. It also seems like she may have been at Hirata Estate during its invasion due to her dialogue with Lord Kudo, where he asked her if there were other Hirata survivors, and she states, "There are very few of us left," implying she was also there. Emma grew up with Genichiro and was raised at Ashina Castle. So, as a basic rundown of what the Ashina clan are looking for, Genichiro, who has really started taking over the head of the clan with the dying Isshin, is willing to do anything to preserve Ashina from his enemies and from being taken over again. This heavily involves trying to use the power of the rejuvenating waters and the dragon's heritage in any way to make his troops stronger and to make himself immortal so they can more easily push back their enemy. As a running theme of the game, the search for immortality leads to massive corruption in men and turns many of them inhuman. This not only becomes an issue within their own ranks, but also a part of the spark that would be their downfall, as their main rival, the Interior Ministry, feared this power and what the Ashina would do with it. As we're told by Anayama the Peddler, the Hirata family are part of the Ashina. During the Hirata invasion, we find both Nightjar shinobi and samurai trained in the Ashina ways murdered by the bandits and invading Interior Ministry's shadows. The people we know for certain allied with Hirata were Inosuke Nogami, a vassal of the Hirata family, his mother, of course, and Nogami Gensai, who helps you fight against Juzo the Drunkard. I do think that it's good to note, the translation of the game is a little awkward, and I believe his translated name should actually be Gensai Nogami, which would make him a part of the same family as Inosuke, or at the very least a part of the same clan. As you can tell with Gensai, he's a samurai trained in the Ashina style. Lord Kudo, the Divine Heir, is of course the most important member of the Hirata family. While I don't know how exactly a dragon's heir comes to be, my belief is that it's likely similar to the Dalai Lama, with the new divine heir with the dragon's heritage being born after a previous one passes away. However, I can't be certain, and I'd love to know what you all think. Sekiro becomes the shinobi serving under Lord Kudo, and therefore extremely loyal to his cause. For a time, it also seems both Owl and Lady Butterfly were serving under the Hirata, and therefore the Ashina as well. We know that they shared sake with Lord Isshin, as he tells us when gifting the Dragon Spring sake to him. Not only that, but Owl betrays the Hirata family by letting bandits in the Interior Ministry know when all of its guards will be out fighting. His information obviously came from the inside, so it's highly likely he was serving the family until this betrayal. However, we'll get more on him and Lady Butterfly a little bit later in the video. While bandits pillage and destroy the Hirata estate during the first memory Sekiro enters in, visiting a time 3 years before the game takes place, we find an Interior Ministry lone Shadow watching over events, and in revisiting with Owl's memories, we find far more Ministry lone Shadows, with Masanari conversing with Juzo the Drunkard about their invasion of the estate. So, let's talk about the Interior Ministry. As the Interior Ministry is also referred to as the Central Forces, it's very likely these forces were controlled by either the Emperor or its current shogun, as opposed to it meaning something like an Interior Ministry within Ashina. While we never meet the key players of the Interior Ministry, we do know a decent number of members who serve it. It's possible this is also who Isshin Ashina defeated in his coup to take over Ashina. Serving the Interior Ministry are all of the various Lone Shadows we find throughout the game. Lone Shadows are the Interior Ministry's most trusted agents. Each of leader Masatsune Oribe's 17 born has a specialty, from poison to shinobi hounds. This, of course, includes the mid-bosses of Long Swordsman, Masanaga the Spearbearer, his buddy Masanari, and Vilehand. Additionally, if you see a character wearing red, they're a member of the Interior Ministry. This would include the General Red Samurai we find during the invasion of Ashina, and Shigekichi of the Red Guard. We also find characters who look like assassins from Senpou also wearing red and siding with the Interior Ministry. While it's possible they also have their own assassins fashioned like this, I find it more likely Senpou Temple, which we'll talk about later, has actually switched allegiance during the middle of the game. In the beginning, prior to the invasion, they're allies with Ashina. However, with Lord Isshin calling them rats early on and having you kill them for him, I think the assassins wearing red hats during the invasion cement them siding with the Interior Ministry. We also have insight into the Interior Ministry's motivations thanks to the Ministry dowsing powder. The Ministry feared Ashina, her eyes bloodshot with the waters of rejuvenation. This powder acted as a ward for when the time came to turn flame to her walls. I believe that between a general desire to rule over Ashina and fear that Ashina might try to conquer more of Japan, the Interior Ministry was prompted into action against the Ashina clan. We know the Interior Ministry struck the Hirata estate, absolutely obliterating it thanks to the intel they got from Owl. However, this was done in secret using bandits, Owl, Lady Butterfly, and the oversight of some Lone Shadows, who, as Anayama informs us, attacked the Hirata estate while all of its young samurai were off fighting a battle, leaving it almost entirely unguarded. From one of the remnants, Genichiro informs Kudo they managed to drive back the Interior Ministry once before. I think it's highly likely this battle was the same in which Hirata estate was burned down, as I'm not sure who else the Hirata samurai would have been off fighting against. So, with that, let's talk about the traitors in Owl and Lady Butterfly. One thing I think is important to note is that Owl's actual name is Unkonzaemon Usui. And we know a few things about Usui, which is a different region from Ashina. According to the Phantom Kunai, since childhood, Lady Butterfly had accumulated much experience in Usui's forest, far from civilization along Tozan Trail. His forest is filled with mist and mystifications, making it ideal for training in illusion techniques. So this goes to show Lady Butterfly was from the Usui region. Of course, there's also the major connection that Sekiro trained under both Owl and Lady Butterfly in his youth. We also know for certain Usui isn't part of Ashina thanks to the Miss Raven's feathers, which inform us, in Usui Forest, far to the north of Ashina, live many mysterious birds of prey. Owl's motivations are made incredibly clear in the Shura ending, as well as the memories you gain for defeating him. During the Sengoku period, all kinds of people were rising up to become daimyos and hopefully the shogun who would rule over Japan. And you didn't have to be born a noble to do this during that time. One of the most famous rulers who helped unify Japan along with Oda Nobunaga and Tokugawa Ieyasu was Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Hideyoshi was born a peasant and rose up to become one of the most influential daimyos of the era. And thanks to Owl's memory, we know, the great shinobi Owl's unbridled ambition was to obtain the power of the dragon's heritage. Now is the time to let one's true name ring out across all of Japan. It was all for the sake of this ambition. Owl bided his time until he finally betrayed the Ashina and Hirata in order to get the dragon's heritage from Lord Kudo and force himself into becoming the new daimyo over Ashina with the ambition of ruling over all of Japan. Lady Butterfly's intentions are a little less clear to me, outside of clearly siding with Owl. One thing that's super important to note is that she drops the Sakura droplet after defeating her in Hirata estate. According to Lord Kudo, Sakura droplets are formed when the undying pledge of the dragon's heritage is broken, and this one was likely Lord Takeru's. It can be used to give a shinobi resurrective powers. According to its own description, pale pink crystal residue known to form when an immortal oath fails to establish. increases resurrective power, allowing 1 additional resurrection. To repeat the vows of the Undying and be awarded resurrective power once more surely necessitates the aid of a divine child of the dragon's heritage. So, we could either gather that this formed after Lord Takeru and Lady Tomoe died, and Lady Butterfly stole it with the intention of forcing Lord Kuro to use it on her utilizing her illusions. Or, perhaps, she already tried to use her illusions on Lord Kuro to trick him into giving her resurrective powers when Sekiro first finds her in the memory. However, this failed, and is what actually formed the Sakura droplet. Another major player in the power struggle is Senpou Temple. However, unlike the Ashina Clan and Interior Ministry, it seems their motivations are different. Something important to note about the Sengoku period is the Buddhist Sohei, or warrior monks. As they weren't part of samurai clans, and they were Buddhist temples devoted to religion, they typically built their temples wherever they pleased and weren't necessarily a part of the ruling clan, even if their temple was within that territory. And it's my belief that Senpou Temple and its monks would be exactly this. However, they became absolutely obsessed with immortality. According to the Senpou esoteric text, those of the Senpou Temple mastered martial arts in the pursuit of virtue. They considered strong fists and strict discipline essential against Buddha's enemies. However, Senpou Temple was seized by an obsession for the Undying, which corrupted their teachings and style. And we see this obsession everywhere. Monks can be found who have become infested, which would be a corrupted form of Undying. We even see in the Holy chapter Infested, they think of it as something holy. For an age, I have been blessed by the worm. To be Undying is to walk the eternal path to enlightenment. Thus, I must become enlightened to understand why I cannot die. So it's obvious that the various monks of Senpou Temple are a part of it. However, the assassins we find in Senpou Temple, often sneaking around gathering information about the state of Ashina, such as the one we find during the prologue of the game, hiding under the Reservoir Bridge, listening in on soldiers' conversations, are also part of the temple. Gachin Sugar tells us that the High Senpou priest gave this candy to a band of short but adept assassins. The assassins do Senpou's dirty work. Once hired guards, now extensions of the monks' will in their quest for undeath. Black Hat Badger, who looks similar to the assassins of Senpou Temple, was actually one at one point until he defected. His reasoning was, after my child passed away, all the grunt work I used to do just didn't cut it. Experiments with rejuvenation, kidnapping, the responsibilities of a black hat, everything to do with this temple was just rubbing me the wrong way. So this bolsters our knowledge of Senpou's monks' motivations. There are dead bodies littered throughout Senpou Temple who are likely victims captured by the Black Hats who were experimented on. We also know that the Divine Children of the Rejuvenating Waters were of course experimented on, and it's very possible these were children captured by the Black Hats. The monks also developed various sugars, which would include Yashariku sugar, Akko sugar, Ungo sugar, and the aforementioned Gachin sugar. Each of these served different purposes, with Yashariku sugar being forbidden at the temple, but distributed far and wide in exchange for donations towards costly Undying research. Ungo sugar, on the other hand, Senpou monks spread this candy around Ashina in honor of her military heroes. From eavesdropping on the assassins Ishin asks us to kill, we know that they were actually allied with Ashina, at least at the start of the game. Assessing the situation, one assassin tells the other, it seems that Ishin's illness is indeed grave, with the other assassin returning that, the land of Ashina will not last much longer even with Genichiro on our side. As I stated earlier, given the fact during the invasion of Ashina, we found enemies who look like Senpou Temple assassins scattered throughout Ashina Castle, only wearing red hats, I find it strongly likely they've switched sides to whom they perceive to be the winning team, the Interior Ministry. Something worth noting is similar to real-life Sengoku Japan, there were various Buddhist temples of varying allegiances. Thanks to Gokon Sugar, we also know of Misen Temple, where shinobi hunters would train at. Misen monks are well versed in the art of killing shinobi, an undertaking that demands a body with an unshakable core. We find one of these at Hidata Estate in shinobi hunter Enshina Misen, thus it's likely Misen Temple is aligned with the Interior Ministry. You may have noticed that there are two extremely important key players to the overall story I haven't mentioned yet, and that's because it's my belief they're part of the Mibu and Okami clans. Lord Takeru is the divine heir of the dragon's heritage prior to Lord Kudo, with Lady Tomoe being his retainer. At one point, Emma tells us a tale of her past at the old grave. Back then, Lord Genichiro and I would come here a lot. Lord Takeru would play the flute and Lady Tomoe would dance under the Everblossom. It was a wonderful sight. We do frequently see flute players in Sekiro in the form of Mist and Fountainhead nobles, whether this be the one we found in the Hidden Forest or the multitude found at Fountainhead Palace. Not only that, but we also find a dancing enemy, the Okami clan members, again in Fountainhead Palace. Lord Takeru's fragrant flower note tells us, it is said that relatives of Tomoe once gathered the Fountainhead fragrance and arrived at the palace. And according to Okami's ancient text, it was an old note left by the Okami clan who sought to reach the divine realm, with it detailing how to properly find the fragrance. The dancing mask tells us the Okami warrior woman would wear this to the Fountainhead Palace. There they would dance as an offering for the dragon. All of these strongly lead to the fact that Lady Tomoe was part of the Okami clan. You may notice that Genichiro's way of Tomoe is specifically when he uses lightning in order to face off against you, and we know thanks to his memories, with his country on the brink of defeat, Genichiro took to heretical arts and mastered the lightning of Tomoe. Such heresy may be the key to saving her. But why is it heretical? Well, according to the floating passage text, this technique belongs to the Ashina sword school, though it has been deemed heretical due to its foreign origin. So, putting two and two together, the lightning of Tomoe is heretical due to its foreign origins, and in my belief, these origins being the Okami clan of the Fountainhead Palace. We know through Okami leader Shizu, found in Fountainhead Palace, what the Okami clan look like. We also find members who use this exact same art of utilizing lightning to attack their opponents. To drive this home, we also know it's not strange for the Ashina to see inhuman beings like the Okami clan, as the Sabimaru memo tells us, wielded in wars of old, the blade's blue rust was used to drive off inhuman Okami warrior women. Even now, it is likely to be effective against their descendants. So, if Lady Tomoe is part of the Okami clan, then what about Lord Takeru? Well, as noted before, he specifically states that Lady Tomoe's ancestors, or the Okami clan, found their way to Fountainhead, so he wouldn't have been a part of them. Given his affinity to the flute, I find it likely he's a Fountainhead noble, or at the very least, a part of the Mibu, who were part of the Fountainhead Palace before it seemingly became corrupt due to undeath. Emma even specifically states of the Everblossom, it is a sakura tree that Lord Takeru brought from his homeland, with Everblossom specifically being something found at Fountainhead Palace and the Divine Realm, as Sekiro even notes when he asks her, so it's a sakura tree from the Divine Realm, to which Emma confirms that it is. For some reason, the two of them descended from the Fountainhead to Ashina, but I'm honestly not clear as to why. There was also an epidemic due to Dragonrot in Ashina's past, and it's highly likely this was caused from Lord Takeru's dragon's heritage. Of the Fountainhead nobles, we do know a few things. The lady who looks like a Mibu villager in the Mibu Manor at Fountainhead tells us, the palace nobles have a craving for the vitality of youth. They can't help themselves, they want nothing but to sap away more and more of it. And in entering the Mibu Palace, we find palace nobles donned in red eating the corpses of other nobles, who look to possibly be a part of the Okami clan given their affinity towards wearing masks. According to the water of the palace, it's a cup filled with divine waters, a drink popular with nobles of the palace. When a wedding procession arrives at the Fountainhead Palace, this is the drink they are greeted with. The nectar of the palace nobles. Go ahead, drink to your heart's content. And we know that wedding processions would enter through the Mibu village cave in order to be taken to Fountainhead Palace, where they offered this drink. Interestingly, feeding the Mibu village elder the water of the palace turns him into one of the palace nobles donning red. Finally, we also know from the other Mibu village-looking lady who's killing the nobles in anger, You beast! You tricked him all this time! Nobility this and eternity that, pretty lies to fool him! Give him back, father! So it seems to me, at one point there were Mibu villagers and Okami clan living side by side in the Fountainhead Palace. However, the common theme of the game is in the corruption and mortality causes. In the case of the dragon's heritage, it sucks the life force of others in order to keep the person containing it alive. In the case of the infected, primarily seen in Senpou Temple, it infests them with a worm/centipede and completely degrades who they are, and in my speculation, eventually transforms them into a mindless creature over time, more centipede than human. Here in Fountainhead, this has also taken hold, and this is where I'm going to get a little more speculatory. I think it's likely that this has caused the Okami and Mibu villagers to transform into mindless beasts whose only goal is to eat the vitality out of others. We see this in the palace nobles, who are probably less affected as they live peacefully with the Okami clan and Mibu elders. We especially see this in the transformed nobles. Additionally, I think they've been tricking, at least as of more recently, Mibu villagers into coming to Fountainhead Palace, promising immortality and nobility, where they actually plan to eat the Mibu villagers' life force behind closed doors. We also know the Mibu villagers are closely affiliated to the Fountainhead, as the Great Carp feeds off precious bait. And looking at the precious bait, you'll notice these are the very same slugs found throughout Mibu Village Pond, and specifically found all over the Wedding Cave near the Shelter Stone. Finally, guarding the Fountainhead Palace and Wedding Cave door, you'll find Priestess Yao, better known to us as the Corrupted Monk. The Corrupted Monk was among the infested, standing over the Fountainhead Palace. Indeed, immortality would seem a fitting quality for Eternal Watcher of the Palace. I believe Priestess Yao was watching over these locations in order to protect the Fountainhead nobles and Okami clan and continuing to feed off of the Mibu villagers. Alright guys, that wraps up my first Sekiro Lore video. I know it was structured differently from my lore videos of the past, but I really wanted everyone to get a good sense of the warring factions in this game, and which characters and enemies are aligned with each of these. I left out some of the minor characters who either don't have a strong affiliation, like the Snake Eyes, or ones like the Long-Armed Centipedes who I'm honestly not sure of their affiliation. I actually started writing this document as a way to help me think about the overall story of the game, and thought it would be a really interesting thing for everyone to think about. I'd love to know your thoughts on some of my various theories, especially as I'm going to be writing a video on the story of the game, and thoughts and opinions are always appreciated. I try to avoid looking at Reddit and other sources of lore information while working on these videos, especially as I'm first starting, but I'm just one person, and I'm sure people with a stronger knowledge of the Sengoku period, Buddhism, and other elements surrounding this game will have fascinating insights. So, to that end, if I do utilize information from my story lore video, I'll definitely give credit. And as I always do with lore from software games, I highly recommend checking out other creators' lore videos to see their opinions. A huge shout out to everyone who supports me on Patreon. I'd especially like to thank Invidentia, Jason Buck, and Jacob for their continued patronage. It means so much to me, and thank you. If you enjoyed this video, I've been making From Software lore videos since 2013, which is crazy to think, so I suggest checking out any of those around From Software. I also try to vary my content and would recommend checking out one of my comedic retrospective super shows, such as my one on King's Field, or perhaps my more serious design discussion around Dark Souls. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.